Hey, welcome to Motorbike Mondays. This is episode 3. This is Evan, and I'm here with Jared and Brady.
Hey guys.
How's it going?
So, we're here at Fort Awesome at Racetech Electric, where we record. We'll put up a video of that on the website, actually, and show you where we record from.
Fort Awesome.
Yeah, we were just talking about that. I think we're going to try and look into doing some videos sometime soon. Hopefully you listened to our first 2 episodes. If not, you should go to motorbikemondays.com and download or stream them and check it out. There's some good info on there, our introduction, and then last week we talked about buying a used bike, what to look for, some good models to check out for different types of builds. So that's definitely something you should take a look at. And today we're going to be talking about what now. So you bought a used bike, and what the hell do you do with it?
But first, what's in the shop?
We need like sound effects for that or something.
Well, there it is. Save that clip.
Yeah, but we need like an intro to like a radio station or something. We need something cool for our,
What's in the shop?
our different segments.
Or we could just have that text tone, the serious one. That always.
Or we'll just use that.
Yeah.
Or just like the worst alarm,
Yeah.
but that's the only one that will wake me up.
That one, every time I hear that, my girlfriend has a friend who has that as her text message tone. Every time I hear that, it just peaks my anxiety level. It's just that sound just does something to my nerves.
Everybody has the like Samsung phones now, and well, at least I hear it all the time. The noise that they're set to for text messages, like out of the box, and I don't have that on my phone anymore. But it always makes me think it's my phone when it goes off, and it fucking drives me crazy. I hate that.
Yeah, I don't. I live in the iPhone world, man.
I live in
don't
Apple
know.
country.
Oh, that sucks. Android's the way to go.
No.
That's a whole nother podcast, but
Yeah, I'm a fan of them.
I
I
had
don't know.
the Google phone when it first came out.
Well, that's
Couldn't do it.
there's so much. I mean, look at this screen. Like, you
It
can
doesn't
watch
have any
porn
cracks
on
in
this. It's perfect.
yeah. And that screen is a lot better than the iPhones.
Yeah, iPhone's just too small.
So back to
Anyway.
motorcycles.
Back to Motorbike Mondays.
So, anyways, I'm Evan from Racetech Electric, and Jared and Brady from Seaweed and Gravel. And, you should check out our website, motorbikemondays.com. It's up and running now. All the shows are posted there. And we'll start working on new content for it, some videos, pictures of stuff we're working on. We'll get some interesting stuff up there. Right now it's just an archive for the shows, but we'll definitely put some content up there, so it'll be worth taking a look at once a week or so. Anyways, let's do what's in the shop. What are you guys working on?
For me, I'll go because it's going to be quick. I'm still working on that.
That's what she said.
Okay. That CB550. The XS750 I haven't done too much work on since last we spoke. And yesterday I've been prepping it to get into paint, which I was hoping to get into it by now, but I forgot I had to fab up some pipes for it. And so
Minor detail.
I was able to do that yesterday. I pretty much is building them off of the stock 4x4s, and I just pretty much just cut them off and cut them to pretty much the second bend out from the head, and just built a 2-to-1 collector, or on each side a 2-to-1 collector, making it a 4-to-2 exhaust system.
Are they open pipes, or did you put a muffler on it?
These ones have mufflers. They're
What did you use?
No, not the shorties. I think they're.
Shorty reverse cone.
Yeah, I guess the shorty to me is like below 12 inches.
Yeah, but they make a regular reverse cone that's like the full 18 inches long.
Yeah, no, I guess it's your shorty. I think
What's
it's
the reverse
14.
cone, where it comes out from the pipe diameter and then goes
Well, it's pretty
in
much
again?
it's the reverse cone is essentially just the end cap to a megaphone. The megaphone like a exhaust, and then it has a tapered in
Yeah.
tip, I guess.
Okay,
That's your reverse cone.
Right.
It is baffled. It'll be aggressive sound. Nothing that's gonna make your neighbors hate you. Yeah. So that's pretty much it. Tomorrow I got to finish making a few tabs to mount some stuff. Which, by the way, I need to get a voltage regulator combo from you.
No problem.
And then start paint prep. And that's what I got in the shop.
This is the muffler, Evan. I'm still working on.
Oh yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah. I'm working on that CB552, a different one. And last week I told you guys it was going to be low and clean. It's not. I lied. It's tall, actually. It's probably one of the tallest bikes that will come out of our shop, right?
I'd say so.
Yeah.
Why?
I mean,
tire
it's
size.
No, because it's not being
usually
lowered. Most of our bikes we lower.
at least the front end.
This bike
We'll be
is
riding
stock height, and then the rear is bumped up as much as it can too with
it
the
has the
CB750F shocks.
Why?
So it's like 13 and a half inches eye to eye or something.
Why?
Like that.
For the look or the person?
just to level it out. And the guy's a newer rider, so we don't want to send him out. Or Jared, sorry. I'm not
Yeah.
doing this
Well,
build.
yeah, he's got the same idea. The guy, he didn't want the bike lowered. He said he wanted it similar to the last build, the last CB550.
Got it.
But he didn't want it low. And so to get that level aggressive look, the back had to come up.
Got it.
Just so it's not so like ass heavy.
Yeah.
It just kind of sags a little bit in the rear, which they tend to do from the manufacturer.
'Cause-
you guys should send me. Now this just popped into my head. You should send me pictures on like tomorrow after we record this. Just send me on your phone. Text me pictures of whatever you're working on. I'll put them on the website.
Yeah.
That works.
That's easy, and then
Yeah,
somebody
definitely.
can see what we're actually talking about.
But we 2 weeks ago I finished that TX500, and it went off to get tuned and everything, and then we did a photo shoot with it today.
Yeah, that was fun.
nice.
And we were able to ride it for the first time, and like
How was it?
in a big parking lot. It's pretty chill, man. The pipes are loud.
They freaking
It's
scream.
super light.
Yeah, they were
And
real loud.
it's super light, and it looks really good and clean. We did like some photos like on the beach, kind of.
Who does the tuning on it?
Randy.
Yeah,
It's
Randy. It's my girlfriend's dad.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
He also what is his? I mean, I know he was a mechanic back in the day when these bikes were
Randy
new, and he
Rode
did
these
race
bikes when they were new.
prep and
Yeah. He raced them, a little bit.
did some amateur
He's the
racing
guy
as
that
well.
messed with the BMW, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And he's just been a mechanic of all sorts all his life. Like he was like a Porsche mechanic. He worked
Porsche,
for
to the
Porsche.
people in Europe.
He
Worked for almost
That asshole.
like
car company.
What do you mean tune? Just dialing in the carbs?
Everything.
Yeah.
He's kind of like.
He's
last
like
set
the
of
fine,
eyes.
yeah, last set of eyes and
He's the
fine tuner.
Got it.
He's quality inspector.
I
He goes through it and like if
we missed a bolt
that's like
Right.
a little loose or whatever, like he checks everything.
thing.
or
Just
cert
through-
clips that are missing. Or,
Yeah, he tunes the carbs, like gets the jetting all good and right.
Generally,
And,
we'll send him a bike that is roughly jetted properly, and he'll go and just dial,
Yeah.
do all the precise fine tuning, so
Right.
it's flawless through the
This guy's
throttle
been
range.
Doing it, for longer than
Right.
all of us have been alive together.
Right.
No, that would make him pretty old.
I think he's 62.
Hey,
Well, yeah, but that would like put him up to like 80 something.
Yes. Well, I'm only 24.
No. Anyway,
Well, you're
you're
still
25,
looking
aren't
at
you?
yeah.
how old are you, Brady?
I'm
I'm
20.
20.
I'm 25 in like 3 weeks.
Okay.
November 22nd.
I'm 28.
Yeah, so you're still looking at like 80.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Hey, my math's not good.
That's cool, dude. You just need to build bikes. Now.
But anyways,
Not do
so we
calculus.
we were able to ride that today, and
It was fun.
It was fun.
Yeah, that thing really screamed too.
It's not very fast. It's not very quick.
It sounds and
It
makes you feel
yeah,
fast.
because
Yeah,
it's
right.
super light and it
Yeah.
doesn't have a speedo, so it's just like only tack.
That's always good on a slow bike. So you
Yeah.
can,
On a windier day, it's going to seem like you're going a lot faster
Yeah.
too.
that's rad. I want to see that thing when it's done. That was a cool bike.
And then I also had a piece of metal in my eye.
That's right.
Oh yeah.
Yep. I got a huge chunk in there. Well, I mean, relatively speaking.
What were you doing? Grinding something?
Yeah, well, on that 550, was like cleaning up.
Triangles and grinding everything down.
And I don't know, that was on like Friday night.
Oh,
Saturday.
that sucks.
And, I don't know, Sunday night, I couldn't see anything, but it was just bothering the shit out of me, and then I found it late Sunday night. And I got it taken out
Put
of
that
my-
mic right in front of your
Yeah.
face.
Well, before-
Your levels just
I can
keep
see
dropping.
it dropping.
Before, it was like peaking. Did you turn me down? I saw you turn me down.
No, I was turning you up actually.
That's weird. Maybe this is the
Cable.
It
Well,
might.
it's a direct.
Oh, hey.
Oh, it is. A cable.
Yeah, it's the
Shit.
cable.
Oh.
Okay.
So if I move like this,
Yeah.
Anyways.
just find the spot the cable works
Yeah.
and keep it there.
yeah. So my eye hurts. I only have a left eye.
That reminds me. Have you ever got carb cleaner in your eye?
Yes.
Yeah.
See, I remember
Gasoline
one time I was
hurts too.
I was cleaning a carburetor and I had the float bowl off and I had the float bowl right in front of me on a bench and I had the little like straw on the carb cleaner and I so I go to like blast it into the float bowl and it goes right around like right around the curves and fucking just power washes my eyes with it. I was like right in front of it and I'm just like, oh, I'll just blast this out real quick. Oh my god, dude. I was screaming. That shit burns
man.
so bad. I went in and just like put my face under the sink and just turned it on full blast. And I was just like, I almost pulled my eyes out.
I did
Yeah,
that,
I don't
like-
think I had
hurt.
quite that intensive experience. It was probably like a couple drops worth.
I wouldn't recommend it,
I
man.
did that a couple
Yeah.
weeks ago. Remember? We were sitting.
Yeah, I was waiting for it too.
I had a jet in a piece of needle nose pliers, or in needle nose pliers, and I was spraying carb cleaner. And it just freaking went
Yeah.
straight into my eyes. Is this?
Whatever. My cable sucks.
You're good. Just keep it right there.
All right.
That reminds me. This is kind of a tangent, but this is funny. So, I remember one time my roommate, like in college, he had this hot sauce. It was called like 357 Magnum or something. It was this tiny little bottle of hot sauce, and the shit was like illegal in 48 states. Like it was so goddamn hot.
Just stomach
like they
lining
couldn't even call
deteriorator.
it hot sauce because it was like illegally hot. And he like was talking about it and he dared me to try it and I was like, all right, yeah man, no problem. So I like put my finger in the bottle and like I just get a tiny little bit on my finger and I licked it and it was so goddamn hot, it like burned my tongue off. So anyways, like this was like half an hour later and I was miserable because like I couldn't feel my tongue, and I rubbed my eyes.
Oh.
And this was like at least half an hour later, so I wasn't even thinking about
Yeah.
it. And I rubbed my eyes. I'd already washed my hands and everything, and I got this hot sauce in my eyes.
Oh man.
It was so bad. So I'm like crying, trying to like get the shit out of my eyes, and I'm like running water on my face, and it's not doing anything. So then. And we were drunk at the time, so like I'm like, what the fuck do I do? Like I can't, my eyes are on fire. And you know, like when you like burn your tongue, like you're supposed to drink milk. Right?
Yeah.
You ever heard that?
Yeah.
Like, I don't
Poured
think
milk in your
it is-
eyes?
Okay.
Yeah, it,
So like I don't think that doesn't really do anything, but like you know, it was.
well, it's
like, I
supposed
didn't know
to
what to do.
neutralize the.
I'm like,
Yeah, the
"Fuck, dude,
pH
my eyes-"
levels.
And so my brother goes like and gets a gallon of milk out of the refrigerator, and I'm like got my head over the sink. I poured an entire gallon of milk in my eyes, like, all over my face. Didn't help.
Oh man.
Anyway, so yeah, I would. Maybe it would help with carb cleaner. I don't know, but I wouldn't recommend it if you're ever in that situation.
Yeah.
Maybe it was 2%, so like I don't know. Maybe
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
a problem.
Maybe you
I
need
should have
that.
gone with the non-fat.
Yeah, was it vitamin
Maybe
D?
whole milk.
Just
would've-
Coconut
milk.
milk.
Vitamin D.
milk.
Yeah.
Soy.
Yeah.
Anyway, just I wouldn't do that, but it was rough. Anyways, okay. So what am I working on? I still have a BMW R90 in the shop that I'm waiting on the customer to pull through on parts, but it's disassembled with lots of work ready to go. Turned out the starter was actually broken. The shell of the starter was split. So I'm waiting on parts to move forward with that thing. That's going to be a lot of work, but it'll be fun.
How'd that phone call go?
From last week.
Yeah, okay. So last week we talked about the my dirt bike that I had sold, the RMZ 250. So turned out, I don't think we'd found the problem then. So turned out the problem was...
I think we mentioned it was the big bearing.
I think we thought it was, yeah. So it turns out it was the big bearing on the crankshaft connecting rod. It actually seized the connecting rod to the crankshaft. Luckily, there's no other major damage. I think the piston, the wrist pin is probably slightly damaged because there's some wobble in it. But the engine's okay overall, but it needs a new crank connecting rod and should have the top end done anyways. So I worked out with the guy. Well, I called the guy, and I doubt he'll ever listen to this, so I'm just gonna go ahead and go on a rant about this.
Tell it like it is, man.
The bike had obviously been run. There's so much shit that didn't add up on this to his story. Apparently, it was run for 5 minutes with new oil in it, blah, blah, blah. Brand new tires showed at least, I would guess, an hour of use minimum. The oil that was new and had 5 minutes of runtime was black, pitch black, filthy. The bike was just filthy, covered in mud and dirt and shit. So none of the story adds up. But anyways, so I call a guy and go over all these points that don't line up with his story. He won't change his story. He swears it's all true, which is bullshit. Anyways, long story short. So we ended up, I feel bad about the situation, but not that bad, but so it ends up I'm going to do the labor, rebuild the engine. He's covering parts on it. And I've got the engine out right now. I'm going to split it down tomorrow and get it ready to go. I'll have the parts tomorrow probably. So, I don't know. I guess that's where it's at. It's pretty frustrating. A lot of work I don't want to do on a bike I already sold.
For being a nice guy. Due
to a problem that I'm pretty sure the guy's taking advantage of me, but, shit happens.
Well, I think at this point, he's not going to fess up, and I'll save you trouble just by doing the work. At least there's no money out of your pocket,
right?
And getting it out of your life to have this guy not.
Pretty much. And I figure, it's good. It'll be good to do a full engine rebuild and go through it. And so, it is what it is. I was thinking about this. So, if I did not run a business and own a shop, if I just, sold this out of my house, I would not do this. But it's more in the interest of, protecting the reputation of my business, basically, is why I'm willing to do that. If it was just me, due to the evidence, the overwhelming evidence that this guy's not being honest, I would, really rather just say fuck off. But
and most shops, if they would have seen what we saw and what you saw, even more so when you dug into it,
nobody would touch it. Man. Nobody would
say, "I'm sorry."
Yeah, but whatever.
Did you tell him to take it to any other mechanic?
Yeah, that was interesting. I did. I brought that up when we were first discussing how to solve this, and I said, "Look, man, based on everything I've told you, I don't think, I don't want to call you out and say you're lying, but I don't think this story is accurate. I don't think this problem was caused by anything related to me. So, really, if I'm going to do anything on it, I would prefer that we have an independent third party inspect it and give their 2 cents on it." And he was not having any of that. It was, "No, I need to get this solved. I don't want to, that doesn't have blah, blah, blah." So much of it doesn't add up.
Yeah.
And then the fact that, he brought up, well, what if you do the work and I pay for parts?
Exactly.
He's all about that. And, what I keep coming back to is that, if that was me, if I was in that position and I really didn't do anything wrong,
I'd be welcome to
I wouldn't
take
pay
it to
for
somewhere
parts,
else.
dude.
There's no way.
I would literally take it to small claims court for that, for a $1,500 bike.
Especially when the top end is going to be $500.
Right.
In parts.
So I kind of feel he screwed it up and knew it was going to be real expensive. So this was, he knows he's getting the better end of the deal,
Yeah.
and was happy with that. Anyways, whatever. I need to get over it, and not dwell on it. It's it's frustrating, but the more I think about it, the more I
It's
get
not big enough to
annoyed.
tear you down.
Nah, it'll be a decent project. I enjoy doing that stuff, so it's not the end of the world. But
Yeah.
definitely time that could be better spent on other things. And that's I guess that's about it. I've still got that XS 750 I need to get on. I've got that starter you loaned me, and I haven't had time to mess with it yet.
I don't think
Hopefully
I
this
won't be
week.
needing it for a while.
I'm hoping to get the engine back together on it and at least get the starter tested out this week. So hopefully that'll get done. But I don't know. A lot of stuff going on. So anyways, I guess that's everything.
That's what's in the shop.
New. So let's move on to our topic. So we're going to talk about what's next, what to do now. So you bought a used bike, and
Most likely it was a piece of shit.
it could be a piece of shit,
Mhm.
but if you just bought it, you probably think it's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Because honestly, if you're doing this stuff,
You're
you're
pumped.
pretty good at seeing the end result through a rusted out piece of
Yeah.
shit and imagining what it's going to turn into. So
Definitely.
I guess we'd all agree it's not a piece of shit. So anyways, Brady, you wrote up some notes, so start us off on this.
Yeah. So as writing these notes, kind of usually the first thing that I kind of base it off if it was kind of had to think back on what I usually do when a bike first comes in. Generally, they're not running, so I kind of took that lead.
Yeah, let's assume it's not right.
Yeah, so kind of assuming it's not running, and if it is, running, it's and not running well, it's probably a good thing just to kind of go over this stuff as well.
Right.
So, kind of the first thing when it comes in is usually test the battery that is on the bike currently. You can get just a multimeter, just a cheap one, or
Let me go over that for a second.
Yeah,
because
you-
the number one thing, like, that you will end up fighting on an old bike, maybe not the number one, but it's a big deal that the battery's in good shape. And so often, you might buy a bike and somebody will tell you, oh, it has a new battery in it. And shit, the battery could even look new, but, it may be 2 years old. It may be new but bad.
Mm-hmm.
It may be new but it had never been charged and it's been sitting discharged for 6 months. And honestly, putting a new battery in a bike that's new to you is some of the cheapest insurance you can get. It can save you so much time trying to troubleshooting,
Yeah.
starting problems, ignition problems, not to mention the charging system. So, honestly, every new bike that's new to me, unless I load test the battery, I'll go over that in a minute, actually testing it, but unless I know for a fact that battery's good, I replace it.
Or just swapping in like a battery
a
that
known
you
good-
know
a known
is
good
a
battery.
known good
that's
battery.
generally what we usually do at the shop.
we have a
but
couple of
we've
those
got.
that-
not everyone's going to have the luxury of having multiple good
Right.
batteries around.
Right.
And I've even used a car battery before.
Sure, you can. You can.
I mean, it's pushing a lot more amps, but
I wouldn't do that long term.
yeah.
But for a test, that's not a big deal.
yeah.
But let me talk about testing these things. So, like Brady said, put a multimeter on it. That's certainly a good test. There's nothing wrong with doing that. In fact, you should do that. A battery at rest, if it was fully charged, is probably going to measure like 12.6, 12.8 volts, somewhere around there. That would be a good battery at rest, no load on it.
If
But-
it has been sitting, chances are that battery's toast anyways.
Right. If you don't measure 12.6 volts or so, somewhere around there, the battery's probably bad, but it may come back up with a charge, or you may have bad cells. But the most important thing is that's a test to guarantee you that the battery is bad if you had fully charged it. So if the battery's fully charged and it doesn't measure, in the mid 12 volt range, then that would be a bad battery. However, that test does not in any way guarantee you the battery is good.
Yes.
And that's something to keep in mind. So, the battery can measure 12.6 volts, but that doesn't in any way tell you that it can source current, especially enough to run a starter motor or other high amp draws. So don't use that as your like definitive test. That's a good start, but you can't rely on that. You can take batteries to like any auto parts store and they can load test it.
Mhm.
What you actually need to see is that the battery can maintain its voltage while sourcing current. And if it can't do that, then you can measure it with a multimeter all day long, and it's not going to give you enough information to know that it's
just
actually
going
good.
to cause just head scratch time.
So just keep that in mind, because that can save you a lot of trouble. And honestly, if it's questionable, replace it.
Yeah, and that can save you a misdiagnosis.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Especially on older bikes that have points.
Diagnosis.
Use points ignition. I mean, you can troubleshoot stuff all day long, and it can be a battery.
Yeah.
Another thing related to that is the battery cables. Ground cable
definitely ground
is
cable.
critical, especially on older bikes that have like marginal electrical systems. If it
That's one of the first things I do is like I go and I make sure that I have a solid ground.
Yeah, always
in the harness somewhere,
and
if
just
not straight.
Clean up the ground cable.
Yeah.
Clean up if there's any corrosion at all, even a tiny bit. If you can see corrosion, you need to clean it, because that again will cause you problems down the line. You need to remove the ground lug where the negative terminal of the battery cable grounds to the frame or the motor. Just pull the bolt off and clean it. It'll take you 5 minutes, and honestly, it could save you hours of troubleshooting. So that's something that I know from experience can save you a lot of time, and for a very quick fix.
And another thing with like just diagnosing any kind of problem when you're starting on these bikes, or any problem that you come across with these bikes, is why is my the most of the time, I'd say like 90% of the time, it's always the dumbest, easiest thing that's the problem.
Yeah.
Like, say your headlight's not working, but you looked at the bulb and it's not blown, and it's still not working, put a new bulb in there. Chances are that bulb is just bad for some reason. Like,
very often.
yeah, it's always something super simple like that, which
Yeah, well, and
which is
another thing, too,
which has
is-
got
So many times.
Yeah,
More
and also,
often than not, it is the simple stuff.
yeah, and that's the first things to check too, because they're usually the least expensive or free fixes.
Right.
But kind of moving more on to say kind of, I
Well,
guess the
wait,
checklist.
real
Unless
quick.
you got more.
I just want to stress, for stuff like this, batteries and just getting started on a bike, your tendency, especially if you're new to this, is you might do a quick search on a forum or something, and you might see like similar symptoms, and people said, "Oh, it's the starter," or blah blah blah. But number one, don't start throwing money at a bike until you actually troubleshoot it.
Yeah.
Because you can quickly spend $500 on parts and not even fix the problem when all along it was a bad $3 ground cable or something. So
you blew a fuse.
yeah, blown fuse, exactly. So number one, just killer advice: do not start throwing money at a bike. You're much better investing your time into learning how to troubleshoot than you are throwing $300, $400, $500 into something that may not even fix the problem.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's advice that was hard learned. So,
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
a lot of times
save
too.
yourself the money and
Yeah,
the time.
I'm sure we'll probably get into this later on, but another thing too is usually wiring harnesses are just picked at and just molested from previous owners trying to fix something.
Right.
Usually, if I see a bike that the wiring harness has been exposed at certain points or just kind of ratted out, chances are the reason it was parked is because there was something electrical going on and they couldn't figure something out.
Well,
Most of these motors are like pretty
Yeah.
strong, pretty
Oh,
bulletproof,
they're
and most of the time it is an electrical problem,
Right.
and people don't want to dig into it.
right.
And
Or they
the
just-
systems are not very hard on these
No,
bikes.
No, definitely
Have you
not.
guys had the pleasure of working on a bike that somebody used wire nuts, like house wiring?
Oh, yeah.
wire
Oh,
nuts
yeah.
for connections?
Oh, definitely.
Or
and
speaker cable?
speaker cable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
That's my
actually
favorite.
the TX had
The
some
TX
of that on
had
there.
some of that. And
awesome.
I've come across actual like home appliance like cable or wire.
Nice. I mean, hey, I get it. If you're in a pinch and you're stuck in
Yeah.
the middle of nowhere, there's a time and a place for that stuff.
Definitely.
But if you see that stuff, replace it, because it
Mhm.
will. Honestly, it's going to cause you problems down the line. It may work now, but when you're stuck somewhere because of it, you're going to really wish you would have taken the 5 minutes to use a good butt crimp or actually solder the thing and not have to stress about it.
Yeah. So once you're confident about your battery being good and it is you're confident about the battery.
And even kickstart only bikes, like the battery's not only important for electric start bikes. Like kickstart bikes with points are going to rely on a good battery too.
Yeah.
So,
not as heavily.
No, not as much. But a bad battery pulling down the voltage can cause problems on bikes that it doesn't seem like that would matter.
Yeah. So after you've sorted your battery situation, the next step I usually take is draining the oil. And while draining it, it's a good time to I'd start definitely with a clean pan what you're draining into. Later you can kind of sift through it and see if there's any kind of metal shavings or any kind. Usually if there's like some white goop kind of stuff, that is water has mixed in with the oil, and there's a possible chance of some internal corrosion done by that. But
we'll put paper towels, drain the oil into
almost like a
pan.
coffee.
Or coffee filter.
Coffee filter kind of thing.
Put something down, and if there's any noticeable metal shavings or anything weird, you'll catch
That's just something to kind of put on the list to check out. But also, I usually to check if there's like gas or fuel and oil. I don't have a sense of smell, but from what I hear, it's like a diet.
Have you ever been able to smell?
When I was younger, but it was very weak sense of smell.
I can't smell at all. I was never in my life I've been able to smell. I've never met anybody else.
Well, that's cool because I've been farting this whole time. You guys haven't said anything.
No, I mean,
well, for me too,
I wouldn't know.
I think it's a little different because I know, only sometimes I know I'm smelling something, but there's no neural connection to recognize what I'm smelling. There's a scent that I'm smelling, but there's nothing to refer it back to. It's like, oh, I'm smelling a fart that Jared just released from his butt. I have no reference from that, so so if you're ever around me, fart you want, and I'm all right. My girlfriend loves it.
Yeah, mine takes advantage.
No, I'm sorry,
of that.
she doesn't fart. She's.
Well, you better not put that on a recording. I just have my girlfriend farts on a recording. She's gonna love that. Just kidding, babe.
Yeah.
Smells like roses. I wouldn't know.
What's a rose smell like?
I don't know.
Smells like my farts.
Let's see.
Hey, Polito, what was the noise of your brother farting into the door?
And no one heard that. It'd probably be wise to cut all this out anyways. We've got to conserve time here. So draining the oil and checking the condition of the oil.
Yeah.
And can give you some signs of what the internal might be, how the condition of the motor might be. So once you drain the oil, I usually don't necessarily put oil right back in. But
if you got other stuff to do,
exactly.
Let it sit for a while, let it all drain out.
I usually, after that point, I'll pull the carbs off.
Yeah. Well, this is, sometimes, all it could take is some fresh gas to get it going. Essentially, what you're trying to do here, we probably should have explained earlier, is just to hear it run.
Right.
And that will give you a good idea that, hey, I've got a good bike. The motor starts and runs, may not run great, chances are it won't. And now you can kind of get yourself prepared for moving forward on this project.
Right.
It's more so to figure out if you have a strong or you have a running motor that you feel comfortable moving forward on, and it's not something you have to go I got to go find and source another motor or do a lot more work than I want to or feel comfortable with.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like I'm not going to do a full carb clean, but I like the difference between clean jets, trying to start a bike.
That's true.
Yeah.
Especially like a bike that's been sitting for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
a couple kicks, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure, I mean, I didn't necessarily go into that quite yet because a lot of the times there's ways, chances are just to hear the motor run,
it's not
you
necessary.
can get it running,
Right.
even if it's just a glob of Hershey syrup in the float bowls.
Because think about it from the point of view of the guy that doesn't quite
Yeah.
know what he's looking at yet. Like,
And I am positive we're going to go through a carb cleaning kind of go through. We'll do a podcast of that probably very soon. What is
so you
that?
put a note there on the oil, 1040.
Okay, yeah, and if you're not sure what kind of oil your motor requires, usually a standard. I go with
That's like
this
a standard.
10W40. I know in like other states where the weather isn't San Diego weather,
Right.
might be
2050.
20W50.
I use 2050 in everything, Castrol GTX.
Mhm.
But on a new bike that, you know, I might be doing more work on and I might be draining the oil again in 10 miles, then I usually just go to Walmart and just get the cheap stuff.
Yeah.
And just, you know,
Well, especially if you're breaking in new rings or something like
Yeah.
that, the cheapest crap because
Right.
you want to get wear on those rings
Right.
to break in. But also, what was I going to say? Oh, on oil, I generally kind of I put oil what's in or what's stated, say, in the manual, or sometimes it'll tell you on the oil filler cap to use this oil. I generally do that even if, say, in colder conditions or whatnot. Generally, the reason I do that is because those motors are designed with that oil in mind while it's being designed, and that's what that motor is designed for. That's why I generally try to use the oil that is specific to that bike.
You can't go wrong if you use what it says to.
Definitely.
You know?
But if you're not sure, don't have a manual, which is another thing to do, is definitely get a manual for your bike. If you can't, I mean, I haven't had too many issues with finding a manual.
Almost every popular 70s and 80s Japanese bike, if you search in Google, if you type in whatever the name is, CB750, and then service manual, and then sometimes PDF, almost always you'll be able to find a PDF scanned copy of the service manual for free.
Yeah.
So,
and if you'd rather have a physical book in your hand, eBay I think is a good source for that. Generally, they have them at other sites, but they're usually new or extremely overpriced.
What I wouldn't do is I've bought the CD-ROMs or download copies on eBay of service manuals, and they're usually such shitty scanned copies they're not even worth, like, you'll find a free copy that's better.
Yeah.
And I also definitely prefer the OEM, like, factory service manual
over
to
like the Climbers.
Climber. They're just not as good. And they usually the Climber manual covers so many more models and year ranges that
it's not
specific enough.
Yeah.
So the factory one usually has much better information.
And that'll definitely come in handy when you're, say, going through valve clearances, points clearances. You're gonna need it just through that. I mean, even as little. I mean, not really that little, but as important as how much oil capacity that motor requires.
Right. Well, I mean, that's what the mechanics were using when that bike was new to service. So you can't go wrong with that information.
Next, after I sort out oil and battery, I'll go through, check out the tank, drain all of the gas out of the tank. Chances are, if there is some in there, it is bad. Typical modern gasoline will start to kind of lose its good after like 30 to 45 days.
Yeah, for sure.
It'll just start causing havoc on all of your fuel systems.
And I've had bikes that would not run with the gas in it. You just change the gas and it fires right up.
So, and a lot of the times, usually,
basically.
Yeah, it just goes flat. And a lot of the times, the person you bought it from probably didn't know they're sitting on a running bike, but they're trying to run it with bad fuel. And so that's generally why I do these steps first, because chances are it's the easiest and quickest way to hear that motor fire. Let's see.
So-
Yeah, and also when you're draining the gas tank, kind of check in there to see if there's any kind of rust or just kind of some general shit
Anything
in there.
floating in it.
Yeah,
if the tank looks dirty,
Mhm.
you know.
And if so, and you don't want to take the steps to kind of clean it out and make sure you're not just unloading little rust bits and crap into your carbs that will just clog it up.
Well, you can make it worse if you don't fully
Yeah.
clean it. You can
Mhm.
dislodge a bunch of stuff that wasn't going to come up otherwise.
Yeah.
So fuel filter is
just run a little
is
inline fuel
cheap.
filter.
Very
Yeah.
cheap insurance, $2, and
Mhm.
you know you'll catch anything that would plug up the carbs. So
Yeah, and also if it does have a fuel filter already on the bike, check it out. I'd pull it off and run some carb cleaner through it, or at least
Get a new one.
just get a new one. But
Yeah.
if it's late at night, all the auto parts stores or wherever are closed. You can pull it off if it is clogged. You want to check to see if it's clogged and flows freely. I've just taken on the outlet side, just pretty much flip it the opposite flow and spray carb cleaner through it. It should kind of break some stuff up to get it flowing properly.
yeah,
Doing that, and then also remember to drain the float bowls, because a lot of the times that old gas will still be sitting in there. And yes, you drain the tank, but there's still that old shitty gas sitting in the float bowls,
Right.
and that's where it's sucking it up from.
Well, so explain how to do that. Most carburetors have a drain screw
Mhm.
on the float bowls, and they're generally oriented so you can get to them with the screwdriver.
Yeah,
a lot of times
usually
they're
a
Phillips.
flathead. Oh, really?
I think so. You think
It's
they're
usually
flatheads most of
flathead.
the time?
Yeah,
Flathead.
little brass like flathead kind
Alright,
of.
maybe I'm wrong.
Caps, I guess, or screws.
Some of them are directly on the bottom. I've
Yeah.
seen a couple that are the screws are directly on the
not-
bottom.
Like the XS down there has Phillips screws on all
Mhm.
three of them.
Yeah, and,
I don't know,
and
whatever.
sometimes,
Drain 'em.
yeah, sometimes too that the actual drains, when you unscrew that, it just opens up a passage to allow it to drain out.
Yeah.
Sometimes those can be clogged up and they won't drain out.
Right.
Then at that point, you're going to want to pull the float bowls. A lot of the times you do, like say on a lot of inline 4 bikes and the carb racks, you have to pull the carbs
Right.
pretty much to get those off. If you're going to have to do that, then you might as well open it up and start cleaning some shit out of there. But if you're able to drain them without pulling the carbs, you're kind of less likely. Well, you're going to want to anyways as you go through
Because
the
otherwise,
bike,
all your new gas, if the float bowl is completely full
Mhm.
of old gas, your new shit's not even going to
Yeah.
make it in there.
exactly.
It's not going to do anything.
So let's see.
You put
yeah,
an auxiliary fuel tank. I mean, if you're new to this, you probably don't have one.
Mhm. we don't.
we
have
still
one,
don't
which
have
we
one.
need one
You can
desperately.
make. I mean, I've made them before out of a milk jug. You know, you
yeah,
just
we haven't taken the time to even do any of
cut
that.
the top or cut the bottom.
We just have
off
like a
and-
quick filler.
yeah.
The
That
carbs.
thing works just
Mhm.
fine. I've got that one from K&L. It's $20 and
Oh, yeah.
on like an
You can
IV
order one of
bag
those.
style, and that thing is paid for itself 10 times over.
Yeah, I
It's-
mean, if anything, it's throughout your build or your project. You're building something custom or just restoring. It's going to be come in handy quite often.
Yeah, you're going to use it more often than you think.
Yeah, and it's not a must. It's one of those, I'd say, luxury things.
Right.
It is possible, of course, to do one without it. And then,
But later on, when you're working on like the wiring harness and stuff,
Yeah.
and maybe you need to test the coils or something, being able to run the bike with the gas tank off is very handy.
while still exposing the
Yeah, the harness.
main harness, definitely.
Yeah, it helps out, but not necessary to get started at
Yeah.
all. But and you can easily build one. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then the next thing I kind of go through is checking the plugs. I'll pull all the spark plugs, and
I usually
check the condition.
yeah,
and then like I'll just spray some carb cleaner on them and run them on a wire wheel.
yeah,
That'll do it.
yeah.
Cleans them up really quick, but
Could use a Dremel and shine them up.
Mm-hmm.
you can't spray.
Might
Yeah.
as well replace them
Yeah.
on a bike that's new to you. It's just
I mean, yeah, exactly.
cheap and easy.
Even if the bike's running, I would still
Put new plugs in.
still just go through, essentially just do a tune-up.
Yeah,
And not only will it be possibly good for your bike because it may need it, it's good for your mental health because you know where everything is set.
right.
And you just feel more comfortable about it too. It's like, okay, I know that it has new spark plugs in it, so
Yeah.
the spark
You can almost
bad.
eliminate that, yeah. But generally, I mean, you can clean them. Their spark plugs are cheap. You might as well just buy a set of how many you need. They're roughly like $3 a
Yeah.
piece.
You don't need like this super expensive like gold-plated array.
No, they're a marketing
No.
scheme.
Yeah, it's
No.
all the same. They all work.
Use the cheap ones. I would pay attention if your bike had resistive plugs in it. Use those.
Yeah, but
if
also you want to check to make sure they require resistor plugs.
well, that's true because a lot of times they're put in, they don't need them.
Yeah.
They're not. Honestly, the bike will run either way.
Yeah.
But it puts the correct load on the ignition
Mhm.
system. So, I suppose that's a good point though because you don't want to trust that what was in it was
Yeah,
correct.
definitely.
So it's worth
Yeah,
looking at your shop manual or quick search on Google.
yeah. Quick search on Google.
NGK's website has a plug finder with a really good database for almost every bike out there. So that's a quick way to check.
Those are like the only ones that I buy.
Yeah, I prefer those.
Yeah, I buy for the 550s, CB550. No, I don't. No, for like the 550s and
the split prong.
those things are so dumb.
What do you get, the champions?
I get the champions.
What are you talking about, man? That's high performance shit right there. That's technology in action.
Yeah, say I mean
That's
for the
money well spent on those split fire plugs.
uh,
Just kidding. Don't buy those.
yeah, no, they're pretty much just the standard spark plugs. They're about as good as you're gonna get.
I've noticed that a lot of auto parts stores now are carrying motorcycle sizes. They didn't used
Yeah.
to, but like AutoZone, O'Reilly's.
They're
Pep
I think they're
Boys.
classified under small engine
Yeah.
spark plugs.
Yeah. But look it up actually, because that's a really good point. Don't trust that what's in it was correct. If you're going to go buy them, you might as well spend the 5 minutes and find out what should be in there, so you get the right heat range and everything.
Yeah.
Just Google like CB550 spark plug.
Right.
hmm
I haven't moved my mic. It's just cutting out. It's like
I haven't done anything.
Yeah,
Keep talking.
You're
We
in
need a
now.
cable swap.
Oh, you're in.
You're
there you
good.
are.
Well, am I going to be there for long?
We'll find out.
Don't
Alright.
move.
There'll be possibly a lot of blanks
Freeze
and
tag.
empty conversations or one-sided conversations if it hasn't been working.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
yeah, no, you can just Google, like, put in your bike and say spark plug, and it'll
yeah.
bring up
and be
the exact one.
year specific as
Yeah,
well.
that's true.
And a lot of the times too, like it will be like 74 to 78, like say CB550,
Right.
or 79, 78. So yeah, just do the research and make sure you're putting in the right spark plug. And then another thing I wrote down was why was it parked? At this point, you're getting roughly ready to
Wait,
try to
real
fire
quick,
it
I got
up.
one more thing on plugs.
Yeah.
Don't assume if the bike does not run, I wouldn't spend a whole lot of time on plugs. Like if you're new to a bike, that could be a tendency, like it's an easy thing to mess with. But don't spend too much time overthinking it, because chances are like any plug that fits will be enough to get the bike running.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't overthink like that that's obviously the cause of the bike not running because it's not the correct heat range or it's resistive and it shouldn't be or whatever. That just don't overthink that, because that's most likely not the cause of the bike not running.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you also want to make sure that, like, it's the right plug, because I've seen plugs or
the
people
depth.
with that
Oh,
the depth is like way longer
That's
than
true.
the threads, and so then if you do get it to fire,
You're just
mashing the end of your plugs with the
Or if you use a shorter plug in a deeper
deep
thread,
well, yeah.
you're not getting the spark in the right location. So-
And then one more thing with the
That's a
spark
good
plugs, which kind of goes up to the coils, is make sure that you have your coils on the right cylinder.
oh yeah,
Because
We
you
learned
could
that
have a
lesson,
bike
yeah.
that fires fine with your your coil plugs swapped,
Right.
your coil wires swapped,
right.
and you won't
You're
it
just-
won't fire ever.
Well, that ties into what we're about to talk about next. Like even if you have spark, if it's not at the right time, it's not doing you any
Yeah.
good.
Oh, and I
honestly,
also check the timing too. Just not set it perfect, but like just get it in the right ballpark. Because if it's off by too much, it's not.
Well,
You're just lowering your chances.
It'll still. I mean, unless
unless it's like 180 degrees.
Lobe is swapped to 180 degrees. I mean,
But
it actually will still fire at that point. I've done that. I've made that mistake. It just runs terribly.
You ever seen an engine run backwards?
Apparently, I might have seen it or heard it.
Yeah, you can do that on older two-strokes. It's interesting. It's really interesting.
Oh, I have heard of that. I haven't seen it though.
Yeah, it's weird. I still actually don't fully understand it. But it does happen. I've done it
It's
before.
got to be such an unusual noise. I'm gonna look that up on YouTube.
Yeah, it's
see if there's
interesting.
something
It's
on
really
there.
interesting.
But
The timing is worth checking if it's a points bike. Like anything that has a digital ignition system, which kind of got popular in the early 80s. The timing is fixed on almost all of them. There's no adjustment.
It's a set it and leave it.
Older point stuff, you could have corroded points. You can easily pull the timing cover off and file them down with a little piece of sandpaper or something. You can check the timing, which we'll not go into that just yet, but you can look it up in your service manual.
Yeah, I think we'll probably talk about this in a little bit too when we start going into checking for spark and stuff like that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in detail later. But it's something that's worth checking if you've exhausted other options. If I wouldn't do that first when you're first trying to see if the bike runs. I don't think checking the timing is the most critical thing because like 99% it's going to be close enough to run.
Yeah, and again, this is just solely to hear it run and to find out if you have a project worth moving forward on.
Right, exactly.
So another thing too is kind of try to figure out why it was parked. It could just be as simple as a lot of bikes were ridden, say, for 5 to 10 years, and then just got over them and sat.
Right.
Where those ones will likely be the easiest ones to start. To a certain extent, I guess. I mean, it depends on how it's stored, but we're not getting into that. But kind of check through, I'd say, like graze over the electrical harness, pull the headlight. Usually all the connectors are in there.
Right.
Make
Look
sure
for melted connectors. That's
or
black connectors.
Yeah, charred. I mean, you don't need to be a scientist with that kind of stuff. Like if it doesn't look right, you should look into it a little more. If it's obviously been burned or melted, or you've got a lot of electrical tape covering something up, or
check
crazy
connectors.
Too. Yeah. If you have different wire colors mated together that look like they obviously shouldn't be, with an aftermarket crimp or tape or something, then I wouldn't mess with it just yet. If you're glancing over it, note that stuff, and if the bike doesn't run, that's a potential thing to look
definitely.
into.
Or if it's obvious that it's been tampered with.
Right.
Usually,
but don't go tear those connections apart before you try and start
leave it be. I mean, give it a solid shot before. These are just kind of things to note, like you just said, Evan.
Right.
So just kind of give it a graze over. Again, fuses were brought up. Check the fuses to make sure at least that the ignition and main fuses are good.
Yeah, it doesn't matter about your
don't
lights
worry about
and your
auxiliaries
accessories.
and your headlight stuff or lighting. Essentially, you just need to worry about the main fuse and the ignition fuse. Most of the time, they will have some kind of label on them.
I would check. Well, okay, I'm going to put a note on this because it depends on the bike. But I think Jared mentioned earlier, check the headlight. You can check the light bulbs and stuff. Those are not critical to it running, obviously. But where I'm getting at on that is some bikes, and it's generally smaller bikes, like 70s enduros, like bikes that were dirt bikes that had a headlight and a taillight on them or something. Now, oftentimes we're talking about smaller displacement bikes for these mainly. So if you're because I've noticed it's seems to be pretty popular lately to take 70s enduros and making little cafe racer styles out of them,
or Brad styles. A
lot
too.
Of those bikes don't have. They might have a battery, but they don't have any sort of charging. A system to regulate the battery voltage, and they rely on the battery and the lights to basically prevent the battery from overcharging and blowing up, and also for limiting the voltage at the ignition system. So I don't want to go into too much detail on it, but on some particular models, the lighting system can be integrated basically with the not integrated, but related to the ignition system to the point where if those things are missing, the bike might not spark.
Okay.
So it's just something to keep in mind. We can go into detail on that later. But if you're working on some smaller bike like that, it's just, when you're going to try and start it, check your light bulbs and, just put a new bulb in it. An H4 bulb is like $5, and you can test them on a battery. Just run 2 wires off your battery and touch different combinations of the prongs on the bulb and see if it lights up. It just it doesn't matter for most of the bigger bikes we're talking about, but it might save you a little bit of hassle if you're dealing with one of the smaller bikes. That might have been too specific.
Yeah,
but
it was a nice note, though. I enjoyed that.
That CT90 I was messing with a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
That was what popped into my head because I was working on the ignition. The thing wouldn't spark at all. Well, it ended up being a totally unrelated issue, a wiring harness issue, basically. That bike has what I just described, the lighting system and the battery. While they're not required to run, they do affect the ignition system, and a bad bulb or a bad battery or bad connections there can pull down the ignition system to the point where it won't spark at all. So, it might
that would make
save
sense
you
on
some trouble.
the XR250 I was trying to help diagnose with a buddy of mine.
I'm pretty sure
because it was designed to run without a battery.
Yeah, I don't think those have a regulator, so they are regulated by the light bulbs. Yeah,
that would
so that's
explain
what
why
I'm talking about.
Kept freaking frying those fuses.
Yeah, it's just something to keep in mind if you're looking if it doesn't work and you're looking for more issues. But
so kind of back on, we're almost ready to start the bike. And I one of the things, or pretty much, like I'm sure a lot know, or if not, a bike needs 4 things to run. Is one is fuel, air, spark, and compression. So with all of those things, a motor can run. Air fuel mixture can do a lot with that. How weak the spark is, I'm sure. Air compression levels.
Gas tank, gas being clean for the fuel, fresh gas. Air, check your air filter.
Yeah.
Some bikes don't want to start easily or run well at all if they don't have their air box and air filter on.
Yes.
So a lot of
usually
times
on those CV carbs, which
they're very picky about it.
I hate those carbs.
Somebody may have put pod filters on it and not jetted it correctly, so it may be way out of whack to even start. So that's something to keep in mind. But we don't need to go into detail on that. Just check the air filter.
Yeah.
Make sure the air box is on and sealed and whatever it needs, and make sure that the air filter's clean.
And at this point, after kind of going through the list and checking everything out, I'd also, before you try to start it, I would try to find the crank bolt and rotate the motor at least a full cycle.
Oh, yeah.
And what you're checking here is, one, if it moves, if you haven't checked that already, or if there's any clearance issues. There could be a valve that's stuck.
Right.
And as you're rotating that motor, or rotating the crank, the piston, as it's moving to the top of the cylinder or making compression, it could be hitting a valve.
Right.
And at this point, you want to make sure it moves freely.
The crank bolt's usually accessible under a side cover.
Yes.
There's usually a small plug on the left side, I think, right?
Right side on Hondas, at least.
Okay.
Generally, I mean,
Yamaha too.
Yeah, if it has points,
right.
generally, well, except on the smaller like 350s, points are on the top of the.
Yes.
Though, I mean, this is a good point, or a good time to revert back to your manual and find out where the crank bolt is, so you can rotate the motor and make sure you are rotating it the proper direction.
Yeah.
And that's dependent on the bike. Usually it's
clockwise. Like KZ's though is counterclockwise.
Yeah.
And that's weird to me. Like, It's I don't know.
It's
It's
just
just
how it was
weird. It's just
designed.
how it was designed.
So check for clearances. Make sure there's no interference, and it moves and rotates freely.
Needs to move, freely. Yeah, no weird noises
Mm-hmm.
or a weird feeling in the wrench while you're turning it over.
Yeah, and it will, as it's getting going through in the compression stroke or the compression cycle of the motor, it will want to tense up a little bit. That's normal, but you just want to make sure that transition is smooth.
Yeah.
And then so once you've checked that and checked that off, I'd say at about this time you're getting ready to start it up and see if you got any life. With the new fresh gas in, make sure when you turn the petcock on, or if you're using an auxiliary bag or a tank, make sure you give enough time to allow the float bowls to fill up.
Right.
Otherwise, you're just spinning and it's not really getting any fuel quite yet.
Yep.
And at that point, I generally give the throttle a couple twists. Just to pump some fuel in there. Most bikes will have an accelerator pump, which will squirt a little bit of fuel into the cylinders to almost just get it going. And try to kick it over. If it runs, you have done your job, and chances are it will not be running great. More than likely, a carb clean, going through, adjusting valves and stuff like that should get it running properly, and a bunch of other stuff,
Right.
of course. We can go into that later and then in a future podcast. But
I think with all those things, if your bike's in running condition internally, then you will probably have it running at this
You should have
point.
at
Yeah.
least heard it
Or
fire.
hear it attempt to run.
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah, it might not run at this point, but it should have at least like clunk, like
yeah,
like
if
fired
you hear him
and
popping,
sparked.
and if you can say, if I hear that thing running for 2 seconds or a couple cycles,
Yeah.
and I hear it firing, I call that good.
Yeah.
And then I allow myself to move on to the next stage, where I usually just start breaking down the bike and start working on prep or working on fab, working on breaking it down,
Right.
starting the build process.
Well, it's really, like we said at the start, you're trying to prove out that the engine is worth the time you're about to put into the
Exactly.
bike.
Yeah.
And it's all about, saving yourself the nightmare of jumping into a big project with an engine that may not even be salvageable.
Mhm.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and also at this point too, if after this procedure and then at this point on the list, don't, and it's not firing, grab a can of carb cleaner,
yeah.
brake cleaner, starter fluid. It all burns hot, and spray that. Say for a reason you have the air box off.
Yeah.
Just spray it into each individual carb if there's
Yeah.
more than one, and try it at that point. That will eliminate that can kind of give you an idea that once fuel is delivered, the cleaner, carb cleaner, starter fluid has just been the alternate to fuel
Right.
going through the carb system or the fuel system. Fuel's
burning
in there.
content is much greater.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Much
Well,
more.
this will tell you that most likely the ignition system is working, and most likely it has compression.
Exactly.
So
And then
it's getting
so the
spark.
problem, which is usually the weakest link, would be the carbs need a thorough cleaning, rebuild. If there's not too much corrosion, or if there is a lot of corrosion, chances are there might be a possibility in having to replace those carbs. But I don't run into that quite often.
No.
I go through a lot of bikes.
And,
You can salvage some pretty gnarly carburetors.
I mean, I generally have been able to salvage every carb rack, carb set I've ever had.
Yeah.
And gotten it to run very smoothly.
Yep.
So at this point, if it's still not firing, give it a good go. I mean, chances are it's not going to fire up within the first couple turnovers of the starter or a few kicks. I'd spend a solid couple minutes or whatever you feel you've put your valiant effort into.
Yeah.
But give it a try. Don't be so easy to give up on it. And then also make sure to check out your spark if it's not going. I think we touched on that.
Can easily pull a spark plug out,
Yeah.
leave it connected to the cable, and then ground it
the
against
head.
the cylinder head and turn the engine over, and you should be able to see a visible spark jump the electrode on the spark plug. there's different levels of it. You can see some bikes with a real strong spark. You can see a big, fat, blue spark. Some bikes, they're just weaker, especially older point systems. It might be not quite as visible, a dim orange spark. But, if it's sparking, you can generally see it. It helps if you're not in direct sunlight. But
Well, you should be able to see, like, a good spark, you'll be able
if
to
it's
see
working
in, like,
correctly,
broad
it
daylight.
should be pretty
Yeah,
obvious.
and you can most of the time hear a little click as it.
Yeah, that's true.
As
You
it-
can
it
also
fires.
get spark plug, like spark testers.
Oh, yeah. They have them at Harbor Freight.
Yeah, Harbor Freight. They're super cheap. They plug into the cable, and they have a visible gap inside them, so you'll totally hear the click
That's
and
cool.
see the
I've
spark
heard of
jump.
that.
Super
you leave
cheap.
the plug in the engine,
Yeah.
and you just connect the spark plug tool to the top of the spark plug, and then plug the cap
Yeah.
wire onto the top of the tool.
Yeah,
That's
I've got
pretty
one.
cool.
I like it a lot. It's cool.
Also,
You
when
don't
you're doing
need it
this,
very often, but
Yeah.
it helps sometimes.
when you're trying to get your bike to start, like a lot of you may have bought a bike and it's completely there, 100%, and then some of you may have bought a bike that is maybe missing, say, the exhaust pipes or the headers.
Right.
Don't
Don't
try to
start the
fire it.
bike
Yeah.
without
Don't
pipes on it.
Yeah.
It's not gonna do anything good for you.
Yeah,
or
it-
that could be the same about carbs too. Like you need to have a carburetor or carb
Yeah.
racks on there.
Well, and also like the air filter, the air box. I wouldn't. You can start it without that if you're troubleshooting, but if you're starting from scratch, like somebody like the Suzuki GSs, for instance, if they the stock carburetors and they have stock jets, they're tuned like out of the box. They almost will not run without the airbox, and the airbox has very specific baffles in it to direct the air, and if all that stuff is
Yeah.
not in place, that bike literally won't run. And I tore my hair out with one of those, a 78 GS 750, until I finally figured out that the seals in the airbox were bad and it was sucking in too much extra air.
Just
And
dirty turbulence air.
so, that's getting like more specific, but don't give up just yet, because there could still be other like fairly minor things that you're just missing out on that's causing that. So, go through the list, and spark is a fairly easy one to iron out because there's no question about it. Either you have it or you don't.
Yeah.
So if you don't, then go back to the start and start, figure out why. We'll go into detail about troubleshooting that later. But, that's one that you can iron out easily because it's physical. Like, you can actually see if it's there or not.
Yeah.
Carburetors, a little more questionable because you can't tell what's going on inside. That goes for air and gas. But compression, is another one that you can test with a gauge.
Yeah, you can do a leak down test,
so-
or even just that thumb trick that I
right.
explained
That's
earlier.
always-
And what I missed in that one is you're pressing down firmly.
Right.
Yeah, you're not.
You're not just covering it.
Right.
Yeah, and Spark 2, another thing also, if one of the things when you noted checking it out, the wiring harness, if it looks all jumbled up, I've even just taken a straight shot, just a wire from the battery, the positive terminal, to the coils.
Yep.
It's usually, if it's just sending power, so I know power is getting to the coils,
Right.
And that can eliminate or bypass some of the stuff going on in the wiring harness.
Right.
But jump on forums at this point if you're still kind of stuck. Or do you know what? Send us an email if you're stuck on
absolutely.
a bike and let us know some of the symptoms that you're going through, some of the stuff that you've tried, and we can we'll do our best to help you out.
Yeah,
Yep.
definitely. We can even have people call in on Skype while we're recording this and talk to them.
Yeah.
So if we can line up some people to do that, that'd be cool.
So we are offering our services to you.
Yeah.
Well, take advantage of it. There's 80 years of knowledge here, right?
Yeah,
80 years of knowledge.
Well, cool. I think that covers
That's
it.
never made sense to me. Like how companies say a combined.
It makes it sound better, dude.
Yeah, but it's not even
I think I
like
say that on my website.
it's not even like okay. He's been
Of
doing
course,
it for
I'm
25
also
years, but
including-
you can't just add those years on top and
I'm
make
including
it seem
Murphy's
greater.
age.
yeah. I mean, they're separate years. They're separate
Yeah,
individuals.
I think it makes sense.
Probably learning a lot of the same shit, but
It's
Yeah.
still, I think it's it's allowed. I mean,
yeah, I call that.
factoring
that
in
fair.
how old the
Alright, I
dog
guess.
is and
Yeah.
how old.
and dog
And
years.
dog years.
Yeah, and dog years. We have
Hey,
a
Murphy.
combined 267
Yeah.
years of experience.
Bring Banjo over. So
Well, anyways, thanks for listening to Motorbike
Thank you
Mondays. Make sure to check out the website, motorbikemondays.com. Hopefully you're downloading it from there. I'm going to try and get this into all the podcast feeds on iTunes and the Google. I think Google's got a podcast search now. Anyways, I got to figure that out. But we'll make it easy to download because probably not a lot of people have found this yet, but we should have a lot of content up by the time people hopefully start discovering it. So,
Yep.
anyways, if you have questions, there's contact email on the website. I think it is contact at motorbikemondays.com. Let us know any questions, feedback, you name it. I mean, we're here to talk about bikes, so.
Yeah, and if you've noticed, I've worked on cutting down on my exactly.
Yeah, I did. Actually,
Yeah.
we've been
talking about that in the
you've
shop.
been very, I don't know what the word is. You haven't delayed a lot. You've been when you start talking, you stayed on topic.
Exactly.
It's good. It's good. Have you been practicing in the mirror?
No, I've just been
We've been
taking a
practicing at the
mental
shop.
note.
Just thinking about
Yeah.
it. I think that helps if you actively think about it. You
Uh-huh.
can make yourself do it.
Yeah, and I realize how much I do commonly. Those things are portrayed in my everyday life as
Yeah.
well.
exactly.
Well,
So
it helps when you're like staring at the waveform and you see it go blank, and you're like, okay. Shit, I guess I'm not talking.
Yeah. So if you want to listen to the old podcast, I thought I'd have a little fun game. Every time I say exactly,
Take a shot.
take a shot or swig,
Yeah, there you go.
get mashed.
That'll work.
All right, guys.
All right. Thanks for
we'll
tuning
see you
in.
next
Thanks
week.
for listening. Later.
Bye.